Morning, everybody. My name is Jeremiah. I am the Technical Support and Training Manager here at Win911. So welcome to another webinar. This one's going to be talking about the voice notifications with the Grandstream UCM6202. And let's get started. So the agenda here, we're going to talk about why we even had to bring this device to market, what happened with the TAPI history and Windows breaking that, and why you need to get a Grandstream for the future. I'll talk about what it is, first of all, the system requirements for it, show you the KB articles for configuration. Then I'm going to go through a demo with you guys to show the configuration and some troubleshooting steps. All right, so the background on this, first of all, we always recommend using more than one notifier method for redundancy, right? You don't want to have a single point of failure with just voice or just the mobile app. You want to have at least more than one, ideally a few. So your options there are the voice calls, email, SMS, and mobile. If you're not aware of our mobile app, we have a lot of information, webinars, videos on the new mobile app. That's a game changer, very good option moving forward. So basically what happened is near the end of last year, Microsoft released update 1903, and that's for Windows 10 specifically, and that broke their own TAPI functionality. So if you're not aware of the history of TAPI, it's a protocol that Microsoft made, and it is old, it is dying, it's going out of style for sure. But we sold, and we were partnered with Multitech. We sold those TAPI modems, and they've been going strong and working well for a long time. Then this Windows update happens, and of course Microsoft breaks things, and it's kind of up to us to figure out what to do as a solution. Now, we did find on some of the forums out there with people doing some testing, there is a registry change. If you still have a TAPI modem, you can do a registry change and get it working again. But the main thing moving forward is to future-proof the system and go with a Grandstream device, because even if you fix the registry right now today, we don't know what Microsoft is going to break in the next Windows update, right? And the changes that you make to your registry right now, the next update could undo those and break it all over again. And it's just not a safe, viable option moving forward. So instead, we did some testing, and I actually got one of these devices and set it up and worked through trying to get the settings right and make this work for us. And a lot of people are moving to it, which is exciting. But a lot of people buy them from us or from other outside sources. And essentially, it's just a replacement to that TAPI modem. It can do a lot more, but for the purposes of what you're using it for Win911, it's for use with an analog line, and you connect to it with the new software, the new version of Win911, not the old V7. So this is kind of just a breakdown of how this works. So Win911 connects to the Grandstream over a SIP trunk, Session Initiation Protocol. It's basically a VoIP connection, voice over IP, and we talk to the device that's anywhere on your network, right? As long as we can talk to it, it's on the same network IP address scheme. We set up a session with it, and then you have an analog phone line plugged into the back of it, and that analog line obviously just goes out into the world. It takes the call over from there to the publicly switched telephone network and calls the phone. If you have long distance or not, all that is dependent on your provider's analog phone line that you guys have in your environment. And then again, from Win911 talking to this Grandstream device, it can be anywhere on the network. It's a voice over IP SIP connection. We hand that off to it, and then the Grandstream config transfers that call over to the analog trunk. So there's a little screenshot here of connecting it, right? So you have the back of the device with a WAN port, LAN port, 2 FXS, 2 FXO. Really, all you need to worry about here is FXO1. You want to use FXO1 for your analog line, and then plug it into either the LAN or the WAN port, depending on your circumstances and your network. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. And then the power cable, obviously. All right, so the system requirements, we first updated our code base to support this back in Win911 version 3.19.9. Obviously, we've come a long way since then. So we're now at 4.20.5 today. So basically, as long as you have our latest version or something 3.19.9 or higher, you're good to go to use this. You do need that dedicated analog phone line, and it is not available for V7 because the old V7 had no option for voice over IP. It was only a TAPI modem or a dialogic card. There's a picture of the device there on the bottom right there. All right, so real quick, we're gonna just go over where to find this information after we're done with the webinar today and you wanna go pull this up. We have a guide that I created for purchasing it from Win911. If you bought the Grandstream from us, it is pre-configured with everything that it needs except for your network's IP address changes, right? Obviously, we can't load a config file and know what specific IP is going to be applicable to everybody's network out there. So there's just a couple of steps you have to do if you get it from us. I also made a guide for, even if you didn't buy it from us, how to configure everything from scratch. So the screenshot here, again, you just go to our website, go to the knowledge base, type in Grandstream, and you'll see they come up not purchased from us or purchased from Win911. All right, so I'm going to get straight into the demo here. Now, if you guys have set this up, are going to set this up, or are currently having issues, or whatever the case may be, I want to make sure that this is as thorough and helpful to you guys as possible that are on here. So thank you for attending. And again, save your questions here, type them into the questions section. We'll have a nice discussion at the end where you guys can, vocalize any issues you might be having or any questions, but I want to make sure we get this covered thoroughly. So here's my VM, and what we want to do is, when you first get the Grandstream, actually what I'm going to do is pull up the actual KB article so that we can pretend like you're doing this all from the very beginning, right? We're going to go over both of these situations if you buy it from us or not. So you go to our main website, win911.com, hover your mouse on the support and go to knowledge base. Type in Grandstream. And first we'll go ahead and just go through the guide for purchased from Win911. And we will hit the other one as well. I'll go through that with you guys. All right, so we got some background here. Same graphic I included there in the webinar slides. And we got some steps for setting your static IP, the date, time, and configuring your Win911, right? So again, everything is pre-configured except you need to put in your network IP because your network's going to be different than everybody else out there. A lot of this is just about how to connect to it. Really, the main thing to take away is that the LAN port and the WAN port are going to act a little bit differently. If you're not familiar with networking and you don't really know the difference between local area network or wide area network, you're going to want to go ahead and plug it into the, if you're plugging it into a switch that's directly connected to your Win911 machine, right? So there's an Ethernet cable coming off Win911 computer, and that's going to a switch. If you're going to plug it in directly to that same exact switch, you can probably just do it in the LAN port, and that's going to just grab an IP on that same IP address scheme automatically. Now, if you don't have DHCP enabled in your network, or you don't know what that is, you can also throw it onto the WAN port. That should automatically grab an IP as well. I don't have a perfect answer to everybody because everybody's network is different. You could not have DHCP on your network. You might not have a Cisco guru that set this up for you. But either way, when you plug it into the LAN port, the default port that's going to come on the machine, regardless of our configuration or not, the LAN port is going to be 192.168.2.1. And so essentially you could even just plug this directly into your Win911 machine. So an Ethernet cable in the back of your Win911 box straight to this LAN port, and that'll create a virtual network connection. You can change the IP address manually right from your Win911 machine to match your IP address scheme of your network. All right, so this part of the connection and the configuration of your IP addresses is going to come from somebody who knows your network. All right, I can't stress that enough. I can't tell you the answer to this. It has to be your IP address network scheme. So if you plug it in, this right here tells you once the Grandstream is successfully connected to your network via the WAN port, network LED indicated on the front of the device will be lit green, and the IP address will be shown on the LCD display. So again, if you do have DHCP enabled and you just plug it into a random port on your switch and it grabs an IP, it will show it on the LCD display. And that's going to be your port for connecting. So you take note of that IP address, and that's where you're going to log into the web GUI. Again, you're going to take your phone line and connect it into FX01. Do not use the FXS ports. All right. So you got an IP address on it, and we're going to access the web GUI. So first step here, you're going to open up a web browser, and you're going to go to this format, https:// the IP address of the Grandstream, which again, it either pulled it from your network or you're plugging into the LAN manually, and it's 192.168.2.1, :8089. All right, so this is the format to connect to it. Now, depending on your browser, you are going to get some kind of a warning because there's not an official signed security certificate. That's fine. We'll show you. There's an example here of IE. If you're using Internet Explorer, you just click on the continue to this web page, and it'll drop down an option for you to just continue on. So don't be freaked out or worry about this screen. It's just saying there's not a signed certificate. All right. So as soon as you get logged into that, and maybe I'll just pull this up for you real quick. So this is mine, right? So I go into a web browser, right? This is just Google, and I'm opening Chrome. You're going to go to https:// the IP address :8089. Hit enter, and then I put one too many in there. And that's going to take you straight to the user interface to log into that Grandstream device. Okay. So again, to go back, if you don't have a router set up with DHCP, you're not sure how to get the IP, you could access this web page by plugging your machine with a network cable directly into the Grandstream LAN port, and you would type in the IP address of 2.1 right there, 192.168.2.1, and it would access the same thing, and then you could change the IP inside there. So you're going to log in. Now this is going to be admin is the password, all lowercase, and then your password is on the bottom of your device. There's a sticker on the bottom, just like every network peripheral and hardware device out there. The sticker has your factory default password on it. So go ahead and put that information in. I recommend taking a picture of the sticker with your phone because the text is super tiny and you don't want to keep going back and forth and checking it. So then we're into the user interface, right? So let's log in here on mine. And we're going to get into the Grandstream configuration. So again, keep in mind, this is the article for purchased from Win911. Now this is just, some warnings that we have to put in there from a developmental standpoint. We strongly suggest setting a static IP. You absolutely must get a static IP for this. There's no question about it. If you have DHCP and you don't set a static IP, the IP is going to change every once in a while. Again, depending on your network settings, and you don't want the IP to ever change. So make sure you get a static IP. If you have to talk to your IT department or your network guys to get an IP set aside, please do so to get that reservation made to get a static IP. All right, so first step here, and really the main one, is setting that static IP address, right? So You log into the GUI, you expand system settings and network settings, okay? And then you're gonna go in to change method, which is this top drop down. It's gonna be route by default. You're gonna change that to switch, and then change the IP method from DHCP to static. That's the next option here down in the LAN settings. And then using that IP address from your IT team or whoever set that aside for you, go ahead and put in the IP address, subnet mask, your gateway, and a DNS server if you guys have one. If you don't have a DNS server, don't worry. It is a required field, but you can just use 8.8.8.8, which is just Google's public DNS. That doesn't matter because we're not doing any dynamic name resolution here at all. So then you're going to click the save button after you put in your IP settings, and then click apply settings. It's going to reboot the device. Okay. So next step, when it comes back in after rebooting, log back into the GUI, expand system settings and select time, and then set your date and time, save and apply settings. Now that's pretty much it. Again, if you got it from us, that's all you have to do. So let's take a look at what that looks like over here. So you want to go into, you first log in, you just got the device, you got the IP address, you're logged in, system settings, network settings. You're going to change the method from route to switch, because again, it is going to be route by default. Change it to switch. This IP method, if it is set to DHCP, make sure you change it to static. Talked about that. Throw in your IP address that you want it to be forever. Subnet mask, default gateway. Even if you don't have a default gateway, again, that doesn't matter. Just do whatever your network IP address scheme is, .1. Right, so here we're using 192.168.1 as the network. And again, if you're not familiar with networking, this should all be provided to you from your IT department. If you're on the network, you can just use a gateway IP address of 10.0.0.1. It just needs to be something in there. And again, we're just talking from Win911 to this device, and then it makes the call trunk over to the analog phone line. It needs no other routing. Nothing else is applicable to your network settings except talking to the Win911 machine. So that's it. Once you get your IP in here, again, here's my DNS is just 8.8.8.8. If you guys have an internal DNS server in your network, go ahead and put the IP in there. And then you're going to click save, and then apply settings is going to pop up at the top of the screen, and then you'll reboot. And then once you come back in, your IP is set. You go back to the time settings, which is still under system. And then you'll go set date time. You can click on this this little miniature calendar icon, and it should bring up today's date. Click OK, and it should be set automatically. If it doesn't, click on the day itself, and you can see it pops in here with the current date of my machine. And then click OK, and then save. And it's going to tell you to log out and log back in. All right, so from the Grandstream settings side, if you get it from us, that's it. That's all you have to do inside the Grandstream UI. Then we're going to move into the Win911 configuration and how you're going to connect to this device now. Okay, so open up the workspace, and go to Contact Gateway Voice, go to the General tab, and then every one of these settings is just directly pulled straight from the Win911 workspace. So just follow this article. We're going to go through it right now. The most important part I want you to make sure you note here is that if you have more than one IP address on your machine that's running Win911, you have to change the binding settings to specify the IP address that is going to be on the same network as the Grandstream. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm talking about here, you can open up command, right? Let's do this from the beginning too. So click on your start button, type CMD, hit enter, IP config. Here's your IP addresses on your machine. You can see I have more than one. I have 1.57, 43.158, and then a loopback address. If you have more than one, like this, you must put in the binding IP address of the correct network, which is talking to your Grandstream. So again, if we go back to your Grandstream IP, we're talking to 192.168.1.36. So my network binding IP is 192.168.1.57. It's not going to be a different network on this network. It's not going to be the loopback. It's the matching IP address scheme here. So you go into Win911. You're in the voice settings page. We're going to go through the rest of these settings, but that binding IP address is right here. By default, it's going to say use all. If you have more than one, this is not going to work. Specify and put in the correct network IP address that matches the network of your Grandstream IP address, and save that. All right, and again, every single setting in here comes straight from that KB article. So user ID 1000, user ID 1000. Display name, you can leave this empty, doesn't matter. Enable registration required, registration ID is 1000. Password 123 ABC, all that is right here. Registration is required, ID 1000, password. Bidirectional channel is 1, right there, that should be by default. And then the server address under network settings, right, so we're just moving down the list. Server address is your IP address you just assigned to Grandstream. So you can see I'm using 1.36, that's my Grandstream IP. And then the important binding information. The rest should all be left at default. You shouldn't have to change anything. This port is the default SIP port. The RTP port range is already set to default. You shouldn't have to change any of this. If for whatever reason, maybe you've set up a voice over IP server previously, you have different settings in here. You know, you had a Cisco call manager or SIP.us, something else you were using, and these are different. That's totally fine. You can go back and check what the settings are supposed to be in the other article that I'll show you. But the rest should all be default, and this all comes directly from the default settings in here. So 5060, you can just Google that. What's the SIP port? That's a universal SIP port. RTP, this is the port range of the actual voice itself, right? So RTP stands for real-time protocol. SIP is the port for the connection, which starts the session initiation protocol conversation. RTP is the voice that's going over that network. So you have your binding IP address, transport type, UDP. You can change this to TCP if you are having some issues with maybe the inbound call isn't working right away. You can change this to TCP because the config file that we load on the Grandstream allows TCP as well. But 99% of the time, just leave everything default in here. And save your settings. All right, so you followed this. Everything else is good. The audio settings tab is just going to go over the options in that screen. The speech synthesis, you have voice selection, speaking rate offset, so that's the speed of the talking, and then the volume. The audio tab also has a greeting message that you can customize, and the codec, always leave the codec to auto. And then you can test your SIP settings. So you can test SIP button, phone number 8675309, like that. Connection results, you should see this green check mark if you're good to go. And then this last part, I'm going to go over this in just a few minutes, but again, it is bold and large letters because it is very important. So once you're in here, audio tab, this is just the other settings, right? Speaking offset. If you want to make it speak faster, you can raise this up. If you want it to speak slower, lower it down. The volume, and then this greeting message. So if you want to change what the Grandstream says when it calls you, just type in whatever you want here. And then auto select for the codec. So again, you shouldn't have to change anything in here except maybe selecting your voice for the very first time, which comes straight from your Microsoft voice engine. As soon as you're done, you should be able to test by calling yourself. If you're calling a cell phone number and you have long distance on your phone line, so you're allowed to, always dial that 1. Excuse me. Calling just a local number, you shouldn't have to do that, but I'm going to call my cell phone real quick. And we'll see if this works or if we can do some live troubleshooting in front of you guys. All right, so we got an error. Good. I like when this happens so that we can actually do some troubleshooting. So it says unable to place a call, SIP line or soft phone is in an invalid state. Okay, so what do you do if you get this, right? Well, usually you just call us and get a ticket going. But again, today I want to show you some steps you can take to kind of help yourselves and get past this much faster. So there's an error. Okay. First thing I would always do if that happens, go back to your Grandstream user interface, log in. And you can see here, there's a blue kind of connected icon showing that you're plugged in to the LAN port and your phone line is plugged in. If your phone line is not plugged in, these will both be gray and say disconnected. So you want to see this, LAN and FX01. Then go down to extensions and trunks. In the extensions part, extensions is literally just saying the extension is Win911. And you can see somebody else is registered to my Grandstream. So I told everybody in the company to leave this alone for the day. This is our one Grandstream for all of Win911 to do testing with, but it looks like somebody else might have registered. So you can see my IP address is the 1.57, and somebody with 1.241 is registered to my extension 1000. So let's see if restarting our voice gateway service will force us to be able to register to that. So you can open up services, go to the Win911 services, right click and restart the voice runtime. And we'll see, yep, so there you go. Now we re-registered and now it's my IP address 1.57. All right, so now, without changing anything else, let's try this again. There you go, that's what you want to see. And keep in mind, there is going to be a delay when calling. It's not going to be instantaneous. This has got to talk to the Grandstream. The Grandstream has to pick it up, transfer it to the trunk, the analog line that goes to your provider, out to the world. Oh, there you go. That's calling me. There is a little delay, but as long as you get that green check mark, that means everything from Win911 talking to the Grandstream device is good to go. Now, you could have a million things wrong with your phone line. That's not up to us. The phone line could be inactive. You could not have long distance. Could be a wrong number that you dialed. You could have an extension for your phone line. A whole bunch of stuff on your own phone line side. But that green check mark means Win911 is talking to the Grandstream. The configuration is good. Now, some things that you can use to troubleshoot is putting in the voice module into debug mode, right? So if we couldn't figure out what this error that I just got was, what was happening, you know, when I came over here to the Grandstream user interface, let's say I didn't see somebody else registered, it just wasn't registered at all, right? What can you do? So the first thing, I'm just going to make sure everything sounds good and looks good. Nobody popped into the question section. Ha, somebody likes my phone number in the article. Thanks, Dean. All right, so first thing you're going to do, open up the Win911 install directory, right? So we're talking about C program files x86, Win911, where it's installed, enterprise, and voice. In here, you have a runtime, which is the service, and you have a config file, which tells the service what to do. So right-click and open your config file with a notepad, and then you're looking for this key right here, add key equals logging flags. You can see mine's already in debug. By default, your system is going to show value equals default. You're just going to change that word from default to debug. Make sure it's within the quotes. Control S to save, close it out, and then go restart your voice runtime. And what that does is it starts the service in maximum logging mode, debug logging, so you have every bit of information you could ever want with what's going on with the registration. So then you open up your event viewer. If you're not familiar, click start, type event viewer, and it'll pull it up. And here's the event viewer. You can see all this voice notification traffic that's going on, right? There's going to be a lot. There's a lot of debug information going on here, but the greatest the best part about this is that it shows every little conversation piece back and forth between Win911 and the Grandstream. Even if you're using different VoIP server providers, SIP provider, anything else, it tells you exactly what's going on. All right, so I want to try to go back real quick and see where we got that error. With simplicity, that's not us. Here we go. All right, so we have an error here. It says registration timed out. What was happening before that? So use these logs to help yourselves out. It says SIP line is disposed. Well, it was. Somebody else had it. But before that, you can see all this conversation happening. So SIP client SIP transport created on my IP address to remote 1.36. That's my Grandstream. Okay. Connected to remote host on 1.36. Sending SIP message to 1.36, the register command. All right, so we're sending register, sending register, sending register, right? So when everyone is trying, we're sending the SIP message register over and over and over. Nothing coming back though. Register, register, and register again. We're trying, and we get to stopping the re-register timer, transport closed, registration state changed to error, the reason, transaction timed out. All right, so this already right there, you know a whole bunch of information for troubleshooting, right? When Win911 is doing its job, it's sending the SIP register command over and over and over. So now you know the Grandstream is not accessible. You have a firewall blocking the traffic. Maybe the IP address is not correct. Maybe it can't talk back. Check your local firewall, check a firewall in between. Go back to your Grandstream settings, make sure that you set the IP address up correctly in here. System settings, network settings. Make sure you can ping it, right? So open up your command prompt and then ping the IP address of Grandstream. You should get a reply, okay, so we can talk to it. So a lot of information just in us sending the register command over and over with nothing happening, okay? Then we should see the error, registration timed out, of course. Then we should see a working setup when I restarted the service. So voice engine stopping. This is going to go through a whole bunch of initial, all right. Sending SIP message register. Register. Oh, stopping still. Hang on, let's get back to where it actually started back up. All right. So right around here, SIP line created, registering phone line, registration state changed to registration required. And now we're talking to the Grandstream on this IP again. Connected to remote hosts, we send the SIP message register, and we get a response, finally. Message received from the Grandstream IP, unauthorized. That's going to be indicative of a password prompt, basically. When it says unauthorized, it means register yourself with the user ID and password. So we send it again, more information there. Then we get SIP message received from Grandstream says 200 OK. Registration state changed to registration successful. SIP line is now active. Now we subscribe. And it should show up with, when everything is finally good and all the conversation has happened, you should see something that says voice module is the lead if you have debug logging turned on right there. This means everything is done, you're ready, you're set to go. All right, so use the debug logs to your advantage. It'll help you with everything, not just voice, but you're having trouble with email, your connection to your SCADA, SMS, the mobile app, anything, use debug logging. It shows you exactly what's going on. All right, so we set this up from scratch following the article for purchasing it from us. Everything in here is always going to be the same no matter what, unless you change it. If you change these settings because you bought this and you want things to be different, I can tell you right now, if you call me or call us, we're going to go ahead and set it up with the settings we know work. You can absolutely change the ID from 1000 to 1001 if you want to for whatever reason, or change your password, but those come from you. This is the default, right? IP address of the Grandstream, IP address of your host machine. That's it. Let's go ahead and talk about if you did not buy it from us. And then I will get to this after we show you if you did not buy it from us. So not purchased from Win91. So there's a few extra steps here. I did actually make it much easier than probably about 3 months ago. I think I updated this in February. And I actually just gave you guys a config file, so it makes life a lot easier, but you still have to go through this to find out what to do. So same intro, you got to reset your Grandstream's default password, set the static IP, date, time, configure Win91. Same intro here, how to get your IP, how to get into the GUI, passwords on the bottom of your device on a sticker. Now here's where things start to get different, right? So instead of just going to change your IP and the time and you're done, you got to load a config file. Previously, I put in every setting that you had to change in here, and it was just ridiculously long. Nobody wants to read 10 pages of settings. So I made a config file, and it is posted on the bottom of this KB article, working backup 2/20/2020. Hey. All right. So you're logged in, you get into the Grandstream configuration. This is where you're going to start. Upload the config file attached to this article. Shows you exactly where to go. Maintenance, backup, click upload backup file, browse the location where you saved it, which is again saving it right from this file in your downloads, wherever you put it on your desktop. Click restore button. Everything's highlighted with red outline here and where to click. You'll be prompted to reboot the device. Click OK. Now, when it gets back online, this is where things get tricky because, again, a config file is going to hold all of these settings that have to be set somewhere, right? So we had to put in a password that is not going to be your default password. So we don't know what your default on the bottom of your device on that sticker is. So we just had to put in a password that you're going to have to go log in with a different one and change it back to your default, right? Because every setting comes with a config file, including the IP address, which we show here. Your IP address is now going to be set to WAN port 1.36, LAN port 2.1. Come in here. Shows you exactly where those IP addresses are. Now this is you need some basics of networking to get back into the GUI, as the IP address may not match your network IP scheme. We already talked about this. Easiest way to proceed is to check if you still have access via an IP address being displayed on the LCD of the Grandstream. So you plug it into your switch or your router in your network, see if it pops up with an IP, or if you can still access 192.168.1.36. And again, all you need to do is open up your command prompt and ping that IP. If it's plugged into the network and you can ping it, then that's the IP it's responding to. If not, then you're going to plug the Grandstream directly into a computer via that network port and use a LAN cable to talk to the Grandstream. So this is, again, if you don't have an IT department that's going to help you set this up and you have no idea how to do networking, plug it directly into a machine. Use the LAN cable, or the LAN port rather, and that's going to be 192.168.2.1. It describes that for you right here. If you cannot access the web GUI after you even plug it in directly, then you need to go back to your network adapter settings on your machine and set your IP address to be on that same network. Example 192.168.2.2. Something that's talking to the 2.1, right? So get your IT department to help if you need to. There's some instructions I included for how to change your own IP address on your machine. All the information's out there. Once you get access to the GUI, these are your default credentials. So admin always stays the same, and this is the password to get in now, because again, that came from uploading a config file. So now you're going to go in and change your default login password back to the one on the bottom of your device, on your sticker. So you log in, go into maintenance, user management, click on the edit button on the admin account, change password, enter the old one, which is here again, and then in both new password fields, password on the bottom of your device. Now your password's back to normal. Now you go in and change your static IP. We already talked about that. Change your date time. We already talked about that. And the Win91 configuration, everything is exactly the same. That's it. The rest of this goes through every other step in the other article. The big difference is you're loading a config file. You got to change the password and then do everything else. All right. So let's just make sure I didn't miss anything here in the actual guide. Nope. All right, so that's it from the setup from both purchased from Win91, purchased from somebody other than Win91, how to configure it both ways, troubleshooting and debug logging. Let me go back to that really quick. So in the KB article for both, you go down to the bottom and there's this important section. So this is a delay that you have to configure inside that configuration file I showed you earlier, and I'll show you again. Again, because of the delay with Win91 creating a SIP connection to Grandstream, Grandstream transferring that to your analog line, and the analog phone delays with the publicly switched telephone network and all that happening, if you try to do calls back to back to back to back, it can hang things up and you can get some failed calls. So we want you to add a 10-second delay. So follow these instructions. It's very simple. You open the config file and you add in this add key value of call delay seconds value equals 10. You literally just copy it from right here and put it in this config file at the bottom. So we'll do it from scratch. Enter, space, 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 space. Copy. Paste, Control S to save or file save, and then go restart the voice runtime. So it goes through it, everything you need, it's there all the time, but very important to add that if you have heavy call volume going through your network. All right, next question here is the old version. Wait, hang on. Is the old version of the tutorial with the 10 pages of settings still available? No, it is not. I edited it to make it this one. However, you can absolutely load the config file and look at the settings for yourself. Again, it's going to be a screenshot of every single thing in every one of these screens. So I configured all of these in the extensions, the analog trunk, and click edit on all of these. And there's just way too much to go over step by step. So each one of these has their own config screen, and you're going to have to take a look at all of them. And again, super easy. Even if you have a pre-configured system right now, just load the config file, change your password back to your own default, and change your IP in time. So yeah, there's extensions, analog trunks, there's outbound route, there's inbound route. There's PBX settings, system settings, just a whole bunch of stuff to go over. So next question here, can you have two voice connections in Win911? So have a VoIP and the Grandstream analog. You cannot. So from Win911, there's just one option, right? You have, let me go and edit. You have TAPI or you have VoIP. And there's one connection, that's it. So if you're trying to do like a failover trunk, you can't do it from the Win911 settings. Now you can in the Grandstream, and I'm not going to cover all of this because this is something that you are going to have to figure out how to set up with your VoIP server, your SIP provider, whatever you're using. You can in here have a VoIP trunk and an analog trunk, right? And then with the outbound route, click on edit. You can see the main trunk you can select. This is the analog one. And then down here, you can have a failover trunk. So you can absolutely get some work done with your VoIP provider, your SIP provider, SIP.us, whatever you want to use, and add a SIP trunk in here and use that as your main, and then have the failover be the analog. That's absolutely doable. The Grandstream can do a million more things than the basic uses that we're using it for. It's a full IP PBX device. But again, we do anything with other VoIP providers or SIP providers because every single setting in Win911 or adding a trunk is going to come from them. And there's too many out there to know everything about. Can you set up and use a second Grandstream at another location as a backup to the first Grandstream? So you can, absolutely. You can set up and use a second Grandstream at another location, but it's going to be tied to its own Win911, David. So again, the recommended deployment for this is one Win911 to one Grandstream to one analog phone line. So if you set up a second one, that's another location with another Win911 instance with its own dedicated analog phone line. So it's that 1-to-1 ratio there. All right, looks like nothing else is coming in, so that'll be it, guys. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your week.